Hi friends, I'm Rishayan. I'm going to continue with the story of the first time that I went to this village in southern Mexico in the state of Guerrero, where I built a house and where I have a house. Even though I can't go there, the insecurity, the organized crime has taken over the entire region, and it's just simply very dangerous. But anyways, in 1993, as I had said in the other video, was looking for a place to work. I needed to work. At that time I wasn't getting Social Security. That's over 30 years ago. And I always loved my Mexico. I've been living in Mexico for the last 40 years. And I had been in California, where I had met a friend, a Mexican friend, in a homeless shelter, who told me he was from Puerto Escondido, Oaxaca, and he was telling me how beautiful it is there, and that it's maybe a place where I could get a job, being bilingual, because of all the tourism and so on that went there. I really didn't know about that place. So I had made the decision to go there. And but anyways, and I left off that I had made as far as Acapulco at that time in a bus. It's multiple days from the U.S. and I needed a place to rest, and so I ended up in this place called Cuajinicuilapa, which is not too far from the border with the state of Oaxaca, and that's in a small village is where I decided to camp along a river. And then the next day my plan was to continue on to Puerto Escondido, where I would look for work. But as it turned out, the people were very, very friendly. This village turned out to be an Afro-Mexican village, Afro-Mexicano, African-Mexican village, with a mixed population of African blood, indigenous Amusco and Mixteco and Nahua blood, and European blood, Spanish, and even French, all mixed together. Very, very beautiful people excuse me, in this region. And so rapidly, like before I could leave the village the next day, as I was waiting for my tent to dry from the sereno, what is it in English? I keep forgetting the word. The dew that had formed on my tent, and I was waiting for the sun to rise up to dry it off so I could pack it up and continue on. First a man came down to get water to drink out of the river. At that time, this village was extremely primitive when I had stopped there. I just wish I had pictures of it. I didn't have a camera. I was very poor and hoboing around in utter poverty. Didn't even have a camera, and there was no cell phones at that time. But this was a very, very primitive village. They had no purified water. You know, today all over Mexico you can get purified water in the garrafones, they call them. The I don't know how many gallons, like 5 gallons, I think, something like that. You know, the big tambos. They have them in the U.S. too, but I don't even know what they call them in the U.S., where you go and you fill them up. And now they're distributed even in the most remote villages in Mexico. The people buy purified water in these large garrafones. But at that time that didn't exist, or at least it didn't exist in the village. There was no vendors of that water. And so the people, for drinking water, took water directly out of the river. And there was a couple methods that they used. I would say the more, what can I say politely, the more advanced people, the more educated people, would take that water and then boil it and then make it drinkable by boiling it for like 5 minutes, which kills all the bacteria and viruses and makes it drinkable. But other people, such as my friend that discovered me in my tortuga, in my turtle camp along the river, would just go down to the river, and they would, hard to explain it, but in the sand. This is a sandy river. It has a large sandy beach, and this was the month of November, so the river was not completely full. It was the beginning of the dry season, and so they would dig up with their hands or maybe with a shovel in the sand until they reached the water level, which was just not too far below the surface. And they dig, reach the water level, which is probably no more than a foot at the most, a foot below the surface, and then wait for the water to clear up, and then with a bandeja, what they call it, which is like a little plastic cup, again, I don't know what you say in English, bandeja, they would take the water and fill up their cubeta, their pail, chum, 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 with this water once it had cleared and the sand had reached bottom. And this was supposedly purified water because the water was naturally purified through they weren't taking it directly out of the river. It was river water, but that flows under the sandy beach. And they would drink it raw, just like that. And their bodies had become used to that. So I can't say that it was all right. I can't say that it was terribly horrible, but that's what they did. That's what they drank. Although diarrhea was a common occurrence. Later on, I had a store, and I had friends that had stores, and there wasn't a day that went by, and this is a small village of about 800 people. There wasn't a day that went by that they were selling tablets for diarrhea, so, you can figure that out. But anyways, this man, Mario Melo, may he rest in peace. Unfortunately, most of the people that I knew in 1993 in this village that I had made friends with, almost all the young people, all the kids, almost all of them, I would say 80 to 90% of them are in the United States today and have children of their own. And many of the older people are all deceased. Not all deceased, but many of them are deceased. And, so it's a sort of a sad thing. But Mario Melo, started talking to me, and he never had seen a tent before, ever, And, and he asked me about that. And I also asked him what was he doing, filling up this bucket with water. And just that quick, he invited me to his house. He said, come live with us, come stay with us. And so I did. I wasn't in a big hurry, and the friendliness sort of overwhelmed me. And I got to know his entire family. Within that very same day, all the kids of the village, and there was quite a few kids at that time, would come down to the river for all kinds of reasons, to bathe in the river. It's a very hot climate, or with their goats and sheep, or to cut leña, which is firewood, or collect firewood along the sides of the river, or many different reasons. And they were all very friendly, and I befriended the whole bunch of kids, in one day. And so I just started living there, and I liked it. And some people gave me the idea that why don't I have para ganar para la tortilla, to earn to buy your tortilla, your food. Why don't I sell candy? And I had lived with Mario's family for a week, but after the week, other people invited me to come stay with them, and there was an adobe house that was abandoned, and they offered me the whole house. When I was with Mario, I had to camp out in front of his house in my tent, but now people were offering me an adobe house that was not being used, that I could stay indoors and have a little more security. And it was right in front of the elementary school, and they said, well, just invest whatever you have in buying lollipops and gums and candy. Well, they didn't really have candy bars, but the Mexican candies at wholesale, and then sell them retail. The kids will buy them. And I did. And believe it or not, just investing, and I don't know how much I might have had, $50, $100. It wasn't more than $100 because I didn't have any money. But investing all the money that I had into candy, I actually made, I could skim off the profit each day and made enough to eat. And I liked it, And I also started giving English classes, made a little money there, and doing odd jobs. I even worked in the fields. And over the years, I just kept going back to that village. I made friends in that village, and I just loved it. I loved the primitive life. Like I said, it was very, very primitive when I first started living there. And, there's so many things that don't even exist today. The women carrying these big pails of water on their head, balancing it. A little girl who now lives in the U.S., is a friend of mine, has a family, has several kids, multiple kids, and I knew her when she was like 5 years old, and she, I wish I had a picture of it, but I have the picture in my mind of her along with her mother walking up from the river, balancing this cubeta, this pail on her head. She did it. And if I say to her today, she doesn't even remember doing it, but she did do it. I don't think she'd ever do it today or even be able to do it today, but she did. She balanced the pail on her head, African style, along with her mother coming up from the river. That was very typical in this area. Also, the men of the village played a game known as pelota. They called it pelota, which was Aztec ball, sort of Aztec ball that came directly from the Aztecs, where you hit the ball with this part of your arm, like this. You can only touch the ball. It's a hard ball. I'm not sure what it's made out of, rubber, I think, or something. And you hit it with this part of your arm, and hit it back and forth. But they called it pelota, and that was still being played. That traditional Aztec game in the main street for the first year or two that I was there. Later it sort of disappeared out of existence, and today you probably won't be able to find it anywhere being played. Those are just some of the things that I remember. Also, nudity, which is a wonderful thing, even though we live in a horrible, puritanical world in the U.S. that is just, I don't know, it's sick, totally sick, this idea against, the naturalness of people. But when I started living in the village, nudity was very common. Everybody went naked in the river, and even in the village. There was things that it was just natural, beautiful. It wasn't gross or pornographic, or anybody thought anything bad about it, but it was just natural. Even teenage boys would be totally naked in front of their house, bathing in the morning before they went to school. I remember there was a girl she was like maybe 17 or 18, that was in the canal. One side of the town is a river, the other side of the town there's a canal, and I was just walking along the canal one day, and there she was in the canal, naked from the waist up, and then just it sort of embarrassed me. I wasn't used to it, absolutely nothing wrong with it, but and she was bathing there, a very beautiful Afro-Mexican girl, and she calls out to me, says, Richard, and I had to turn my head. I was just out of embarrassment, but there was no embarrassment at all on their part until the Christians came. And started telling people, put clothes on, stupid asses, I swear. But that was the beauty of this village, in so many ways, the great innocence. And there wasn't the violence that there is today. It's a Wild West area. It's a rough and tough area. In fact, the very first day that I was there, or the second day maybe you'd say, that I was there, I was sitting along the river. I think I was playing cards with the kids on the beach of the river or something, and I heard what sounded like gunshots, close. And later found out that it was indeed gunshots. At the bridge, a man who lived, and it was like, we're talking about maybe just 400 meters away from where I was at. There was a woman under the bridge washing clothes, which is very common. The women at that time all washed clothes every day along the river. But her husband was up the hill, sort of observing, watching, and this criminal, this bad person, bad actor, on horseback came, got close to the woman, seen that she was wearing some sort of jewelry. Gold and silver jewelry is common and inexpensive. Well, silver is anyways, not as expensive as what you might expect, and it was very common. They even had silver earrings that they would, and gold earrings that they would have on their children, and still to this day. But anyways, I guess he's seen her necklace, and he got close to the lady and made an attempt to steal the necklace, and she screamed. Her husband came out of the house with a rifle and fired at the thief on horseback. Did not hit him. He was able to escape and get away, and it was a frustrated robbery. But that occurred the very first day that I was there. So it's a rough and tough area, but basically I never had fear up until 2024, when I can't go there anymore, that the violence has just become totally extreme. They've just killed way too many people. But for 30 years, it was my village. And I had lived in multiple houses over the years in this village. I would come to the United States when I was younger and work for 6 months, 8 months, and then go back to the village, open up a little store, sell things over the dry season, and then at the end of the dry season, go back to the U.S. And that's how I lived for 30 years. And knew everybody from the very youngest to the very oldest. And the sensation of being there was just, you have to live through it to understand it. You know, I remember in the earlier years when I would come there, I guess everybody knew me, and kids especially, because of selling candy. But when I'd get off the taxi or the bus after being gone for 6 months or so, and start walking down the hill into the village, from every corner I'd hear people say, "Richard, Richard, 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 Richard." You know, I mean, it was just really like I was some movie star or something, you know, overwhelming. And it was a magnet that just kept bringing me back to this village constantly for 30 years, you know. And I even lived in other villages in the region, but I was stuck to that region. And I never made it to Puerto Escondido, you know. I never made it to Puerto Escondido to work. I was satisfied with my little primitive life there in this village. And I went to Puerto Escondido, but in recent years, like in 2018, I think was the first time that I went there just in passing to Puerto Escondido. But I never made it in those earlier years when that was my goal, to go to Puerto Escondido and get a job. I was trapped there in that little village, and that's where I stayed, and that's where I loved all the people. And like I said, those people, those that escaped, so to speak, the young people that I knew from the time they were between 5 years old to 11 years old, are almost all in the United States, and working and have families and are very successful, and I'm very proud of that fact. But the violence in recent years is just horrible. There is no future for young people today at all in the village. And I have three godsons in the village. One is getting married this month, the month of May of 2025, and he's 17, and he's marrying a 14-year-old girl who looks like she's 12. Unbelievable. Unfortunately, I can't be there to actually see it, but you know, wow, what can I say? But my encouragement is to leave the village, because the future at this time is not bright until Mexico is liberated. You know, I hate to say it that way, but it has to happen. The violence, the insecurity is just overwhelming today, and so that 30-year dream has come to an end. And so I have to look for someplace else in Mexico that doesn't have that level of violence. It still is relatively tranquil and peaceful, and try to make friends all over again. But anyways, that's the story of how I ended up in that little village in the municipio de Coajinicuilapa, in the municipality of Coajinicuilapa, Guerrero, in 1993. Have a nice day, my friends. I'm making this video from inside my tent because it's late in the day here where I'm camped in Pennsylvania in the forest. But it was a cold front that's come in, and it's windy and cool outside, so you know, I just make it inside. You know, it's a little warmer here. Have a nice day. Until the next time, I am Rishayan.